So, this all started on a Tuesday afternoon. Pretty much the most unremarkable day of the week. I was sitting in my office at the university, sipping my lukewarm coffee while scrolling through my phone, when the thought hit me. It wasn't something I'd planned for, or even something I'd entertained before. But at that moment, it felt like the answer to everything that had been missing in my life. You know that feeling when everything in your routine feels so predictable, so safe. I'd been in this loop for months. Teaching, grading papers, going to meetings, working on lesson plans. The students loved me and I loved them too. They joked around with me, we got along fine, but deep down I felt like I was stuck. I was too good at being the cool, fun teacher. So much so, that it almost felt like I had no room for myself, no space for something exciting or new. And that's when it struck me. I had been going through the motions for so long, and honestly I was craving something a little more wild. A little out of character. Something that would break free from the monotony. What if I could shake things up? Just a little. Just enough to feel alive again. Swinging parties. I know. You're probably thinking, what? You of all people. But that's the thing. It wasn't just about the party. It was about doing something that broke the rules, something that took me out of my comfort zone and into, well, whatever zone that was. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I started talking to Sarah, one of my fellow teachers. She's the type of person who lives on the edge without even realizing it. We'd often joke about how boring our lives had become, but this time, I could sense something different in her response when I casually brought up the idea. You know, she said, raising an eyebrow, I've heard about these parties. They could actually be fun. No judgment. That was all the encouragement I needed. The more I thought about it, the more it seemed like the perfect escape. I wasn't trying to make any huge life changes, but I was definitely ready for something different, something I could never have imagined myself doing. I wanted to break free from the rigid walls I'd built around my life. So, I did what any person would do when they're craving a little adventure. Planned it. A small gathering, a few colleagues who seemed like they'd be up for anything. At first, it was supposed to be casual. Just an excuse to hang out after school hours, have some drinks, let loose. But then it started to spiral. And not in the way I expected. The invitations went out. The whispers turned into curiosity. And before I knew it, I was standing at the front door of my apartment, looking at myself in the mirror, wondering if this was such a great idea after all. I didn't have the courage to call it off though. And that's how it all started. A simple idea, an innocent invitation. And a room full of people ready to break the boundaries. What could possibly go wrong? It wasn't until I stood in the hallway of the university, just after the last bell rang, that I fully understood what I was about to do. The day had ended, the classrooms were empty, and the campus was slowly settling into the usual post-school quiet. But for me, the silence was deafening, because what I was planning to do next was anything but quiet. Sarah and I had spent the last few hours making sure everything was set. The university was mostly empty now. Everyone had gone home for the day, the halls echoing with the sounds of janitors cleaning up and professors finishing their lectures. But our plan had been simple. Invite a handful of colleagues and a few curious friends, and throw a small swing party. Just a few drinks, some conversation, and, well, whatever else happened after that. The thing is, I hadn't really thought this through. It was one of those ideas that seemed thrilling at the time. Throw a party in the staff room after hours, somewhere people wouldn't expect. But now that everyone had arrived and the door clicked shut behind us, I could feel the weight of it all. The reality of what I had just unleashed was settling in. I turned to Sarah, who was already making herself comfortable by the desk, flipping through a stack of papers. Her grin was mischievous, her eyes sparkling with excitement. You ready for this? She asked, her voice hushed but full of energy. I think so, I replied, trying to keep my composure, though my heart was racing. Let's just keep it simple. No pressure. But the energy in the room told me otherwise. The space was small, just a faculty office tucked away behind the administration hallway, but it felt charged. Every corner of the room seemed to pulse with a mix of excitement and curiosity. The faculty room had been a familiar place for all of us. We'd spent hours here, talking about class assignments, grading papers, and brainstorming new ideas for lessons. But now, with the lights dimmed and soft music playing in the background, it didn't feel like work anymore. Felt different. The drinks started flowing, but the air wasn't light, not exactly. It was thick with tension, as everyone danced around what was about to unfold. I caught a glimpse of the clock. 8:15 p.m. The party had officially started, and the vibe in the room had shifted. People were loosening up, conversations turning into quieter whispers. Every laugh seemed to echo with a little more flirtation than usual. Eyes lingered a little too long on others. Hands brushed as they passed drinks around. It wasn't obvious. No one had made any overt moves, but I could feel it. The boundaries had started to blur, and no one seemed to be quite sure where to draw the line. Sarah turned to me, a glass of wine in her hand. "Let's move to the back," she suggested, a knowing smile spreading across her face. I nodded, swallowing the nervous lump in my throat. It was time to shift gears. Time to take this to the next level. We'd set up the back office as the swing room. It wasn't much. Just a small space, a few throw pillows, and some extra lighting to make it feel cozy. But it was enough. The group followed Sarah and me as we walked toward the back. Everyone had been hesitant at first, but now, the curiosity was impossible to ignore. It was as if the entire room knew exactly what was happening, even though no one had explicitly said it. The door to the back office closed behind us with a soft click. The lock slid into place, and just like that, the outside world faded away. The tension in the air was thick now, almost palpable. No one was sure where things were headed, but we all felt the shift. Everyone was here for something new, something different, but what that something was remained a mystery. "Let's just relax and see where this takes us," Sarah said, speaking up for the first time since we entered the room. She set her wine glass down and looked around at the group. "No expectations. We're just here to have fun." I watched as the others nodded, some with uncertainty in their eyes, others with excitement. One by one, they settled onto the cushions scattered around the room. Some exchanged casual glances, while others lingered in conversation. There was a small murmur of laughter, but beneath it, there was an unmistakable sense of tension, a collective anticipation. The music played on, slow jazz filling the room. And that's when it happened, the shift. A few more drinks, a couple more laughs, and suddenly the space didn't feel so small. People were moving closer, speaking softer, looking at each other with curiosity, with desire. It wasn't obvious at first. No one made a move that crossed a line. But there was this energy in the air, like an invisible thread connecting everyone in the room. It wasn't so much about the actions. It was the vibe, the unspoken understanding that something was about to happen. I caught Sarah's eye again, and for a split second I felt it. The thrill, the electricity of it all. The idea that this was our moment. The culmination of everything we'd hinted at with our casual glances and whispered words. And that was when I realized that this wasn't just about the party anymore. This was about breaking free, exploring something new, something I'd never thought I'd experience at a university after hours. The clock read 8:50 p.m. We had less than 10 minutes to go, but the party had already become something bigger than what we had expected. The energy in the room had changed. Everyone was leaning in, talking in quiet tones, exploring the boundaries of comfort. No one had to say anything. It was all in the way we moved, the way we looked at each other. 1 hour, and the world as I knew it, our little bubble of order and predictability, was already gone. The room felt alive with possibility. For that 1 hour, nothing mattered outside that door. The world beyond the staff room and the narrow halls of the university didn't exist. All of us had let go of our responsibilities, our inhibitions, and it was thrilling. The music was soft but pulsating, conversations were hushed, and every look, every brush of a hand against someone else, made the air thicken with excitement. It was the kind of energy you couldn't fake, couldn't recreate. It was real and it was electric. And then, the knock. It was soft at first, almost like a distant echo. I wasn't sure who it was, but the sound made my heart skip a beat. I looked up and there was Sarah, frozen for just a second, eyes wide, her hand halfway to her glass. Everyone in the room paused. The door was locked. No one should have been able to get in, right? The knock came again, more insistent this time. My stomach churned. I glanced at Sarah, who quickly whispered, "Stay cool. Just stay cool. It's probably one of the janitors or something." But as the third knock echoed through the room, that sinking feeling in my chest was undeniable. This was no janitor. This was someone who knew. I just knew it. I stood up, hesitating for a moment, the world suddenly moving in slow motion. My legs felt shaky as I approached the door. The music seemed to fade into the background as my mind raced. Who could it be? No one had been invited except for the people I trusted. I reached the door, and before I could even peek through the peephole, I heard a voice, one I recognized all too well. "Open the door now." It was the director's voice, sharp and commanding, cutting through the thick silence like a knife. The blood drained from my face. There was no mistaking it. The director had arrived. My hands shook as I reached for the doorknob, but before I could turn it, the door swung open with a force that almost sent me stumbling back. There he stood, Director Harris, his face a picture of fury and disbelief. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene. The atmosphere, the dim lighting, the group of us sitting in scattered chairs, half drunk, some of us still locked in conversation, others just waiting. Waiting for what? For him to say something. It wasn't long before the tension in the room shifted from excitement to panic. The laughter, the flirtatious glances, the whispered words, it all stopped. The air was suffocating now, and the energy had completely reversed. What was once a moment of liberation had just become a moment of doom. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice booming across the room, cutting through the heavy silence. This is what you all do after hours. This is how you represent this university. I trusted every single one of you, and this is what you do." Everyone in the room remained frozen. No one dared to speak. No one dared to move. "I can't believe this," he muttered, almost to himself. "The entire faculty will hear about this. All of you, every single one of you, are fired." The word fired hit me like a slap in the face. It wasn't just a statement. It was a sentence. The weight of those words, my words, felt like chains wrapping around me, dragging me into the cold reality that everything I had worked for was now gone. I could see the shock on everyone's faces. Sarah's eyes were wide, her lips parted as if she couldn't quite process what was happening. Some of the others started to look around, as if hoping someone would stand up and say something, anything, to make this all go away. But nothing could. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. I had no defense. How could I? I'd been the one who suggested this in the first place. The one who had dragged everyone into this mess. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a disaster, and I had led everyone straight into it. "You think this is funny?" Director Harris's voice had risen now, the anger barely contained. "You think you can behave like this and still keep your jobs? Still act like you're educators, like you have the right to teach? You've destroyed everything I've worked for here. I've had enough." I could feel my legs weakening, the weight of his words crushing me, making it hard to stand. He wasn't just angry, he was livid. And why wouldn't he be? I had brought this upon myself and everyone else in the room. I had no one to blame but myself. Director Harris took one final look around the room, his eyes sweeping over every single one of us, his judgment as cold as the air that now surrounded us. He was done. He didn't need to say more. And then, just like that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving us to absorb the fallout. I stood there in stunned silence, my mind reeling. I didn't know how to fix this, didn't know how to take back the last hour. The weight of the moment sat heavy on my chest, suffocating me because I knew it wasn't just my career on the line. It was everyone else's too. Do you think he was serious?" someone whispered from behind me. But no one else dared to speak up. No one wanted to break the silence because we all knew the answer. We were all done. I wanted to say something to make it right, to somehow explain that it wasn't supposed to go this far, that we were just trying to have fun, just trying to break free. But the truth was we had crossed a line, and it was too late to go back. We were all fired. And I was the one who had brought it all down. The days after the party felt like a blur. I don't think I've ever experienced time moving so slowly, each moment stretching longer than the one before it. It wasn't just the fact that we were fired, it was the shame. The absolute gut-wrenching shame that followed me like a shadow. Every time I walked through the streets or saw someone I knew, I couldn't shake the feeling that they could see it. See what I had done. I had never felt more alone in my life. What had I been thinking? I kept asking myself that over and over, replaying every moment of that night. From the excitement to the thrill of doing something different, to the horrifying moment when the director walked in and everything crumbled. The worst part wasn't losing my job. It wasn't even the disappointment I saw in the eyes of my colleagues as they stood there, just as shocked and ashamed as I was. It was knowing that I had ruined everything for them, for me. For all of us. I had invited them into this mess. I had suggested it, had encouraged them to take part in something reckless and stupid. And now I was the one who had to carry the burden of it all. And for what? A fleeting moment of excitement. A night that promised adventure and thrill but left only regret and devastation in its wake. I couldn't stay in the city anymore. I couldn't stay where everyone knew who I was, where they could look at me and know what I had done. The whispers followed me everywhere. People talked behind my back, their judgment weighing on me every time I passed them in the halls or saw their eyes flicker in my direction. I could feel the resentment and anger in the air like it was tangible, something I could reach out and touch. I couldn't handle it. So I packed my things. I didn't even tell anyone I was leaving. How could I? What could I possibly say? There was no way to justify what had happened. I thought I was just shaking things up, doing something out of the ordinary, but now I saw it for what it really was. Huge mistake. The worst idea I'd ever had in my life. I drove to the outskirts of town, leaving behind the place I had called home, the place where I had tried so hard to fit in. Every mile that passed seemed like a relief, like I was shedding a skin that I couldn't stand to wear any longer. But even as the distance between me and the university grew, the shame didn't leave. Stayed with me. It was a part of me now. I was running, yes, but not just from the people who hated me, from the mistakes I had made, but from myself. From the person I had been that night. The one who thought she could just push boundaries for the sake of excitement, not realizing how far those boundaries would stretch until they snapped back and shattered everything in their path. When I finally reached the new town, I found a small apartment. It was quiet, peaceful. Everything was calm and it felt like a fresh start. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape what I had done. It was like an invisible weight on my chest, suffocating me, reminding me every second that I had ruined not only my own life but the lives of those around me. I thought about reaching out to Sarah or any of the others to apologize, to tell them how sorry I was for dragging them into this mess. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. What would I say? That I was sorry for ruining their careers. For ruining their lives. They were angry, and they had every right to be. I had betrayed their trust, and I had no way of making it right. That night was a mistake. The worst mistake I'd ever made. And I would carry the weight of it for the rest of my life. Because sometimes, the thrill of something new isn't worth the devastation that follows. I was never the same after that. I couldn't be. And maybe, just maybe, that's the price you pay for chasing excitement without thinking about the consequences.